Hello, I hope you are enjoying a clean, safe, Florida beach as I do. Lately, lobbyists have put a measure up which threatens the safety and cleanliness of our most precious resources, our citizens, our families, and our environment. A lot of underhanded money has been invested into pushing something bad on the ballot with virtually no organized opposition, so I'm taking some time to discuss facts regarding this. Your brain development is the most important thing you have. Without it, all muscle and action is poorly guided, leading to failure to achieve anything good. Imagine any government system that would have the power base inhibit full and healthy mental growth. Policy would be made on feelings based on addiction or entertainment designed to get lower intelligence mentalities to respond a certain way rather than critical thinking. Our founding fathers did not have modern threats to worry about. It does stand to reason any form of democratically functioning form of government requires a voting body to be of sound mind and free from substances that would elicit an unnatural affinity for an unhealthy lifestyle. Psychology experiments show addictive substances override a natural sense of priority, causing subjects to pursue the addiction to the detriment of themselves and their group. Marijuana acts on three main dynamics. The first is its psychoactive effect. We are supposed to have a sense of connection to reality. This is especially important when things are bad in our lives. Psychoactive substances detach the user from reality. A problem happens when people start detaching from their bad situations. They tend to want to get back to a detached state more and more instead of addressing the root cause of what's causing the problem. The second dynamic is how marijuana causes premature loss of gray matter and interferes with developing brains. The damage that occurs is often irreparable. The third dynamic is chemical dependency. Take a look at cigarette addiction, see how hard it is for tobacco smokers to quit. Users get so frustrated with their chemical dependency on natural tobacco, often, the user will deny addiction or claim long-debunked medical use. Nobody is the better person for getting hooked on tobacco products to begin with, same with marijuana. Addiction is a game of loss. The only not to lose is to not play in the first place. Not only does cannabis consumption stimulate its own addiction, it is also found to drive addicts to chase other chemical substances to enhance its effects. Marijuana causes chronic disease. The mechanism is very much the mechanism which makes tobacco products so harmful. If you were paying attention to high school chemistry, anything that grows leaves is chemically organic, and burning any chemically organic material will produce a lot of carcinogenic compounds. This toxicity is especially enhanced when funneled and directly inhaled in immediate proximity to your lungs. The incidence of lung and internal organ cancer from cannabis smoke mirror those of cigarette use, and that's considering either crop in their natural form without considering pesticides and additives. Why would cannabis not obey the same chemistry that tobacco or any other complex organic material? Cannabis just has the adverse effect multiplier in its added psychoactive component. Due to both aforementioned physical damages, marijuana is responsible for significant social problems. The psychoactive effects have been known since antiquity to drive violent behavior. The word assassin ultimately comes from powdered cannabis eater. These were not respectable warriors by any means and were used as nothing more than war fodder outside conventional military conflicts, and with mostly lackluster results. Amazing how things have not changed. In the latter half of the last century, marijuana, LSD, cocaine, and crack were introduced into select regions of the United States and were each instrumental in destabilizing those neighborhoods, districts, and wards. Marijuana and crack were particularly driving factors in hood shootings glamorized by hip-hop and rap culture. Gang members would often detach themselves from reality using marijuana prior to drive-by shootings. There is evidence recording labels may have been complicit in artificially embedding marijuana into these communities. Not restricted to the hoods, marijuana was used alongside with LSD to cause similar destabilizations in Northern California and New York before spreading between the strategic locations. Cult leaders and followers would often disassociate with reality by consuming cannabis prior to murder sprees. Across the country, marijuana abuse was often encouraged right before eliciting the users to make bad decisions to their detriment, like giving up everything they owned to participate in a crazy spontaneous whirlwind religion. Maybe we should try and forget all the bad music that came from drug use and rekindle the creativity of classics made before cannabis spread from the Orient. Studies in criminal behavior show clear rises in homicide, domestic violence, and rape from using marijuana. Not only does cannabis drive rapists, it also is used as a means to perform the act on victims. Aside from driving intentional violent crime, marijuana use also drives unintentional harm to users and innocent bystanders. Reports from around the state show accidents and accident fatalities rise from marijuana consumption. I don't drive inebriated. If you've ever lost someone to an inebriated or distracted driver, this should strike close to your heart. People trying to legalizing recreational weed either speak from their own addiction or from a lot of misinformation spread regarding the impact of cannabis use. As those psychology studies have shown, addicts become preoccupied with their substance addiction at the expense of their own health and the safety of those around them. So much that they ignore the ample amount of real studies conducted covering each way marijuana is bad. Some groups have gone as far as push the internet full of fake studies denying the earlier credible, peer-reviewed studies. Many of these false studies are disseminated by organizations based in foreign countries like the UK to bypass American laws and liability. This way, the group makes up whatever they want and can make it look similar to real studies conducted in the United States. Other fake science is produced within the US and is produced by special interest groups. Upon reading the articles, the study size is either too small, not representative, misusing statistics, or outright making up statistics out of thin air. One study I read referenced another study which pulled seemingly statistical data yet intentionally misrepresented what the values were for. I have even come across recent articles in normally trustable medical journals that under closer inspection provide fraudulent information. Others who are trying to legalize recreational use try to use medical use as a means to elicit an emotive response. Firstly, most people who advocate for their own medical use are simply addicted to the chemical substance and are not using marijuana or any of its derivatives for any of the claimed use. There are withdrawal symptoms for any addiction. Marijuana addiction causes chronic disease, so users are relying on further marijuana use to cover for initial marijuana-caused symptoms. There is no disease that cannabis cures. In fact, marijuana has no medical relevance. Diehards cling to the most obscure research that states it could show promise someday for the most impractical specific circumstance. In all these incidences, the science is not there, and there are many more developed techniques, procedures, and actual medications for all of those obscure cases which are showing significantly more practical application in a very short time compared to the 4,000 years of research into cannabis. In any case, whether or not marijuana could ever have a medical use, that's not on the ballot measure. Recreational use has nothing to medical use. They put out that marijuana is just a plant or something God put here for people to use, except that water hemlock, deadly nightshade, poison ivy, oleander, are all just plants and are very deadly. God certainly did not put them here for us to ingest in like pot. They sure as heck are not medicine in any form. Some are trying to say recreational use would stimulate the economy, which, as every high school dealer figures out, it makes the drug dealer wealthier as it destroys the person who buys from them. In that sense, it will put money into a legitimized street dealer's wallet, just not for the benefit of the general population who has to live with the crime and social problems recreational use causes. Sort of like the propaganda floating around that recreational legalization revenue would be put into schools when there is absolutely no written verbiage in the amendment requiring them to put any amount into schools, and still, the adverse effects on students' developing minds along with the secondary harmful effects to families and communities is not worth the baseless bribe offer. Others will claim state weed would be safer. Well, that's relative, as it's probably safer in some cases than eating LSD-laced glass shards. Still, a bad decision is a bad decision. Credible reports do show illegal marijuana use and pairing with other drugs rises in jurisdictions that allow recreational use. More will claim recreational use is only for adults. However, all practical consideration and observation show the exact opposite. Even the more credible of studies show adolescent experimentation with marijuana rises when made recreationally available, supposedly just to adults. Others still will attempt to deflect away from all the death and destruction cannabis causes by bringing up alcohol. Well, alcohol cannot be compared to marijuana as the chemistry is totally different, the history of each is completely different, and the physiological and psychological pathways have nothing in common. To make it short and simple, alcohol has an actual medical use as a disinfectant and has saved countless lives in early surgery and treating wounds in prior wars. Marijuana has none of this, it's just bad all around without any redemption. Lastly, there are those who claim people against legalizing dangerous weed are paid off. They claim law enforcement is paid bonus to bust them on drug charges and that opponents are paid by the hemp industry. Both are baseless. Maybe sheriffs and police are people like you and me and don't want a more dangerous work environment than they already have. They just want to do an already risky job with minimal occupational hazard just like everybody else. I'm not law enforcement and I sure haven't witnessed offers or even know about any money from the hemp industry. I oppose the amendment from research and seeing, firsthand, marijuana consistently destroy humans from the inside out. There is one soul out of tens of dozens sheriffs who got hired for the push to put citizens on addiction. He is either an outright sellout or the dumbest sheriff to ever be elected into public office, probably both. By far, it is almost ubiquitous the landslide majority of all law enforcement who sees the effects of marijuana and its derivatives on society are vehemently opposed to any measure to make such a destructive substance recreational. Like I said, a huge amount of dirty money is behind the initiative to push weed addiction on kids and adults in Florida. If you consider a bit of history regarding the related tobacco industry, you may recall big corporations invested huge sums of money into promoting fake science to attempt to show cigarettes didn't cause the cancers they actually caused, and movie production companies played a large role in making the known addictive products socially acceptable to the public. These were all efforts to bypass legal restrictions on advertising and distribution. As marijuana is a historically newer phenomenon, it is seen by big bad business as potential to generate all the revenue of old tobacco without the restrictions and bad reputation tobacco has, despite the fact marijuana is far worse due to its psychoactive component. An intensive investigation will show that 1980s conglomerate corporations made from hostile takeovers of big tobacco and big junk food teamed up with big forever war and big pharma. These huge conglomerate corporations use smaller corporations to obscure their stock holdings and influence. Take a look at the major stockholders behind the initiative. They may have funny names and their major corporate stockholders may have funny names, too. A few layers in, you will eventually find they are dominated by and controlled by these bigger human-killing corporations that pop up all over investigating the major shareholders. You need to ask yourself, why would a group of mercenaries want to use street thug tactics to put Americans on dangerous mind-altering drugs? They make a killing off of killing. What do you do as a voter as this initiative got bribed, lobbied on the ballot? Even if you are addicted to marijuana, you too can do your part in keeping marijuana out of the hands of most school kids whose brains are trying to develop and out of the hands of adults who don't need another crutch to make their bad situations worse. Be a part of saving lives. Vote no on Amendment 3. Pardon the pun, this is a grassroots effort in the absence of any organized opposition and complete lack of funding to protect the great state of Florida from the ballot measure. If you think the story of David and Goliath is about an underdog, I'm more like a bee standing up against the planet Uranus. I happen to do good for those around me against a great butthole full of hot gases. Please like and share this video and get the truth out there.